There's no sport besides maybe chess that cannot benefit from resistance training in terms of strength training as a goal.
No woman by dabbling around with some weights in the gym will accidentally bulk up. It really takes a lot of work.
Strong is also the new lean, if I could call it that. Many women are striving to be strong and healthy because of the positive benefits that it can help with health, and not just focusing on how it looks but also how it feels and the benefits for their life and longevity.
Welcome to another empowering episode of smulcast, where we explore the intersection of health, wellness and fitness with leading experts. I'm Dr. Ledivia Strauss and I'm your host. Today we will be uncovering all the secrets to effective strength training and why it's important for every woman. We will be going from bone health to metabolism and debunking the myths of becoming too bulky when you do strength training. Joining me is the incredible Dr. Shaundré Jacobs. She is a lecturer and researcher at the University of Stellenbosch, and she's going to be sharing all her insights with us today. Welcome, Shaundré.
Thank you for having me.
Would you please introduce yourself to our listeners and just tell us a little bit more about yourself?
I'm Shaundré Jacobs and I'm from Stellenbosch University. I'm a senior lecturer. I've been at the department for many, many years. I specialize in strength and conditioning and fitness, and I have a massive love for strength training, having been a strength training athlete myself. So I'm looking forward to share today.
I'm so looking forward to you helping us debunk so many myths out there. So let's start off by telling our listeners why strength training is so extremely beneficial for women.
So the first issue that we have with women is that many women suffer from osteoporosis. So that is where there's a lower bone density, and that might lead later on to have a higher percentage of fractures that could occur, or even falls later on, which might be dangerous to many. So when you look at resistance training, it focuses on static weight bearing, where if you compare it to aerobic training, it's basically high impact, and you have your walking, which is your lower impact. So when we look at strength training, it helps with compression forces as well as tensile strength, which helps with the bone density and to keep that osteoporosis at bay. Then we have your basal metabolic rate, which obviously increases as you do strength training. And this helps with just the vital functions in terms of breathing, being able to have the organs operate and do what they need to do, but also brain power, because we need energy even at rest. So that helps with when you do strength training. The next one will be strength training helps with your daily functioning. So ladies, we know we're sitting in the office for numerous amount of hours at time. And what happens is you have a lengthening of your posterior chain, which is the back side of your body. And that means that they are lengthened. So it is your glutes, as well as your hamstrings, as well as your calves. Then your anterior side, which is the front of your body, shortens. And that's why when you stand up after sitting for a long period of time, you feel stiff and you don't feel great in your body. So when you do strength training, a lot of the exercises actually forces you to have an increase in range of motion. So that's why it helps with your daily functions and helps you to do normal daily tasks. Then there's also the influence of hormones. So when you do resistance training, it helps with the decrease of cortisol, which is released when you are stressed, and then also increases the growth hormone. Ledivia, do you want to maybe make a comment about hormones and strength training?
Definitely, and thank you for mentioning that, because so many people think that muscle is only important for movement and stability. But our muscle is actually a miraculous endocrine organ also. It releases myokines, which are actually little hormones that help with our metabolism, our immunity, and our cognitive function. And as you've mentioned, there are so many hormones actually being released just by the contraction of that skeletal muscle. Things like dopamine and serotonin, which are our feel-good hormones. The stress hormones, as you've mentioned, the noradrenaline, adrenaline, and our cortisol. And also something called a brain-derived neurotropic factor. That is actually something that helps with our cognition and our brain function, and why it's so extremely important to keep moving as we get older. And then also, like I said, it's supporting our immune system and very importantly also our glucose metabolism via the insulin and glucagon pathway. How does strength training contribute to overall health and aging gracefully?
So as we spoke about, the bone health is quite important. By doing strength training really helps with maintaining your bone density. And as we grow older and we don't participate in physical activity, that will increase. So I think we need to stay away from increasing the numbers and getting osteoporosis and focus on the bone health. And then we also have decreasing the chances of getting sarcopenia, which is a natural occurrence that will happen. But if we do strength training, it really helps in terms of just building the muscle, and then that will help in terms of increasing metabolism and then helping us with our weight.
Up to the age of 70, they say we still really have a good capability and capacity, even up to the age of 75. And then it starts becoming a little bit more difficult.
No, and even the combination of having aerobic training and resistance training is so beneficial to any age. And I think the combination of the two, as we've unpacked, is quite a powerful combination. So I think people just need to exercise. They need to get out there. They need to be able to do something, whether it's for 20 minutes or 30 minutes. I know we live in a high-paced life and people are living more convenience, but I think going for a walk or just doing a circuit training at home, 2 or 3, 4 exercises that you can do, and then you can see that you are increasing your health. But we need to be conscious about our health so that we prevent in the future having cardiovascular diseases that will put us out for even longer. So rather have a focus now on improving our health and wellness.
Exactly. And it's important to choose something that you will be able to keep doing long term. So choose something that you actually enjoy.
Yeah.
So can you explain the various focuses that we have in strength training and how it can be implemented practically?
So I'd like to start off by saying that many people think that when you say strength training, that it's only one form. There's actually 4 different resistance training goals. So that's what I'll refer to quite often. So just for clarification, it is that you're focusing on a specific element within that training block. So the first one would obviously be your strength training. And strength training, the focus is to improve the movement of the muscle by increasing the strength in a single effort. So most general population can benefit from that. So it helps them with their daily tasks, help them to do, walking or being able to do gardening, etc. So it can help them in various ways. But then if you look at performance, all sports, I actually did an analysis, there's no sport besides maybe chess that cannot benefit from resistance training in terms of strength training as a goal. So it really helps with that transference from the resistance training into your sport as well. Then the second one we get is hypertrophy, and hypertrophy is where there's an increase in cross-sectional size. That is when you want to increase the diameter of a muscle. And I think that's where the misnomer came about, that when you do strength training, you will become bulky, because people thought about hypertrophy training. There are certain sports where being bulky is quite beneficial. So your contact sports like rugby, etc., and women do play rugby. So I think that might be beneficial for them. But from experience, I've done hypertrophy myself as well, and I don't feel that I'm bulky in any way. So hypertrophy training has its place. Also, when you start off with a certain resistance training program, you need to either start off with muscular endurance, which I'll talk about later, or your hypertrophy, because it's a perfect foundation on which to build. Then we have our third resistance training goal, which is muscular endurance. This helps for the muscle contractions to be able to sustain itself, but for a longer period of time. So this is also linked to the general population, helps with your health as well, but it's also mostly for endurance sports where they can find the benefits in that. The last one, which the general pop will not most likely use, and that is your power. So power is mostly for athletes where there's a power element. So you might have basketball or rugby or even athletics with the sprinting. They might find benefit from doing power training. That's your Olympic lifts. It's complex movements, but the speed element is quite important. So I think the most important is being able to identify at which time you would like to focus on which resistance training goal, and then obviously building that up as you go along. And have a normal response. If you're starting out with a training program, is starting off with muscular endurance or hypertrophy, and then moving over to muscular strength and only to muscular power if that is linked with your sport, etc. We also have in resistance training something called sequencing, where if you go into one resistance training block, by going back to another actually helps with adaptation. So maybe you start off with muscular strength, go to muscular hypertrophy, and go back to muscular strength can actually enhance the training adaptations.
And it's so extremely important what you mentioned, that I don't think there's anybody in the world, male or female, that will accidentally bulk up. It takes an immense amount of planning, nutritionally and training-wise, to really get that bulky look that some people go for, especially in the competition. So thank you for clarifying that and for reiterating that no woman, by dabbling around with some weights in the gym, will accidentally bulk up. It really takes a lot of work. But strength training and building the muscles and the strength and the movement in your muscles is so extremely important for the activities of daily living. And this brings me to my next question. Can you please explain to the listeners what an important role muscle plays in our metabolism and even in weight management?
Yeah. So when you do resistance training, you have a higher metabolism. That means you burn more calories, which a lot of ladies would like to hear, okay? So what happens is, unfortunately, as you age, we have what we call sarcopenia. And that is where there's a loss of muscle mass that occurs. Or it can be a loss of physical activity, people not doing, participating physical activity anymore. So we need to see that if you do resistance training, it increases the metabolism, which then means you increase the amount of calories you burn. And the more muscle you build, the more you increase the metabolism. And that means that you actually manage your weight quite appropriately. If you train harder, you will be able to train for longer. So you will keep increasing the metabolism and then obviously managing your weight as you see fit. However, we need to recognize that we have responders versus non-responders. And there's various other factors that could influence your process in terms of adaptation to resistance training goal or weight management. And that might be sleep, it might be eating, it might be it might be hormonal changes, and also health conditions. There's various health conditions that might influence your ability to manage your weight. So we can't look at resistance training only as this magical potion, but also you have to see what you're eating, your rest and recovery and sleep, and then also other medical conditions as well.
In my practice, I see that quite often, that women go on this specific diet or calorie restriction, but they neglect building muscle. And as you lose weight, your basal metabolic rate goes down. That's just a normal physiological adaptation. But as you mentioned, by preserving and building muscle, you can actually maintain that basal metabolic rate at a higher level. While you are working towards your weight goals. And that is where a tool like measuring your body composition with an in-body, for example, is so extremely important to see, while you are in this weight loss journey, what are you actually losing? Is it only fat? Is it a lot of muscle? And to really work on preserving and building that muscle while they are in this process. And I also like that you mentioned the bit about the sarcopenia, because that is something that's also extremely important, especially in the field of medicine where I'm working with regards to longevity and optimal health. Because regulating and being able to keep our blood glucose stable is absolutely central to our existence. And our skeletal muscle is actually responsible for 80% of the post-meal glucose uptake. And that is very important to realize, and that is, as you mentioned, as we get older, we become more sedentary, we lose our muscle, or just even in younger patients we start seeing this. We live in this world of overnutrition, becoming sedentary, losing our muscle mass, and then these muscles actually become desensitized to insulin. We call it insulin resistant. And then, unfortunately, that post-meal glucose response is blunted. And then it is when insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes are starting to become a problem. But the good news is that exercise in itself is actually a therapeutic modality. And there's a lot of research being done in that, where we can use aerobic training, but also strength training or resistance training together with that, and to actually decrease that circulating glucose, because by the muscle contracting, it's actually decreasing the blood glucose in the absence of needing the insulin response. And that is quite significant to realize that there's two ways for the muscle to get glucose from the circulation. It's the insulin dependent and the insulin independent model. And that is why it's absolutely crucial for all our listeners, not only ones struggling with insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes, to understand why exercise, and specifically working on preserving and building your muscle, is so extremely important.
Yeah.
So Shaundré, we are talking now about the importance of building and preserving muscle. So how can women then structure their trainings to build muscle but not become too bulky, as we've mentioned?
Yeah. So firstly, I would like to say that that is a misnomer. I've participated in athletics at a very high level for quite a few years, and I was not bulky. Strong is also the new lean, if I could call it that. Many women are striving to be strong and healthy because of the positive benefits that it can help with health, and not just focusing on how it looks, but also how it feels and the benefits for their life and longevity. So when we look at hypertrophy training, if you want to increase your cross-sectional size, and this is for the women who participate in contact sports or in rugby, you're looking at a rep range between less than 6 repetitions, and you can work within 3 sets. Normally it depends on your training age, but I would recommend you stay within that, and the intensity will be 85% of your maximum effort that you can give in terms of the intensity that you can work in the gym, 85%. Then we have your muscular endurance, if that is your goal, and you're doing aerobic type of sports or endurance sports. We're looking at a rep range between 12 to 15 and above, so it's a higher rep range. Again, you can look at 3 sets, depends all on the level of the person, but obviously we're starting out, we could have 3 sets, and the intensity is 67% or less of your max. Then we have your muscular strength, and that ranges between 6 to 12 repetitions, and that's at 85% of your maximum, and 67% as well, so between that. And then you have your muscular power, which is only for those who want to participate in sport where that's a element, so speed is quite important, and that will be 1 to 6 repetitions, and the intensity is between 80 to 90 and 100% of your maximum intensity. So that is quite hard to be able to implement, but I think if you stay within those rep ranges as well as within those intensities, you'll be able to hit those training targets. Again, you shouldn't be training them all at the same time. I think have a specific focus. I mentioned earlier that you can have with 4 to 6 weeks for adaptations to occur, so that could be the duration of those training blocks as well.
And I think it's extremely important for our listeners to realize also that, yes, we say that strength training and using different weights are very important, but something that I think we really need to reiterate is for them to understand to have the correct form and also the correct weight that they are training with. Yes, we want everybody to start lifting those weights, but please don't just walk into the gym, lift something, you might hurt yourself. You need to either consult with a professional to help you with a training program, or take a friend, or make sure that you know exactly how to perform each exercise safely and with the correct form. Because you can lift a 10 or a 12 or a 15 kilogram weight, but if you do it incorrectly, you might hurt yourself, or you might actually not get any benefit from that specific exercise. So that's just something that I think is really important to understand. And you mentioned that they need to train at the certain percentage of their max. What do you mean by the max intensity? Is it the maximum amount of weight you can lift one time? Just explain that a little.
Rightfully so. You need to be able to find a scientist or a personal trainer who can do maximum testing for you. They will be able to do what we call repetition max, or 6RM, which is multiple repetitions. And then from that, they will be able to give you what your maximum value is at 100%. And then you will be able to work out the percentages. So you need to find someone who can do this for you. Otherwise, it will be quite a mathematical task to do. We also have a formula that you can utilize where you take the weight multiplied by a formula of an exercise, but that's, we as scientists, we would do that for a specific client, and that's an estimated value in terms of what your percentage would be. But my recommendation would be, especially working with females, because when you go into the gym, it's quite daunting, and especially going into what we call the dungeon down there with all these heavy weights and machines. And I would say start out with own body weight type of exercises. If you can carry your own weight, then later on you'll be able to carry an external weight. If you can't, then I don't find the value in terms of, you know, putting a bar on your shoulders or being able to do bench press. So start off with your own body weight exercises. Then you move over into more resistant bands. We've got what we call power bands or terra bands, and you can use that as an external resistance. There's also different types, so you can amplify that as you go along. Then I would recommend that you do your machine-based type of activities, because those ones are still loading the spine. So you're still getting the load on the bones and the joints, but it's a safe manner. So for instance, doing a squat in a Smith machine, that just helps in terms of the safety and not being able to, if you don't have the stability, you won't be able to do a squat because you'll, you know, go all over the place. Then later on adding free weights, which will help you in terms of the local stabilizers, but well as the recruitment of the global movers as well.
And I think it's also important, as you've mentioned, they can either go to the gym to work with the circuit or with the weights, but it's also something that can safely be done at home. If you've got your program and you know how to safely perform your exercises, you don't need to do 15 exercises to be effective. You can choose 3 to 5 exercises and repeat them, but make notes and see where you start and then see how you improve. And that's quite rewarding to see how after a month or two how you can actually do either more reps or go to a heavier weight. And this takes me to my next question. What practical tools can women use to maximize their strength training?
Okay, so the first one is going from a general approach to more specific. A lot of people, they start off their resistance training program going very specific with certain exercises that mimics their sport code. So I would recommend that you start off with general exercises. We normally say general prep, general exercises. Lay the foundation, get the stability that you need, and then you can move over to more specific exercises. So example would be starting off with double-legged squats and then moving over to more single-legged squats as you get a little bit stronger. Another one would be overload. A lot of people don't like to overload their muscles. They use the same weight, 5 kgs bicep curls for how many months, and you're not going to get stronger if you do that. So normally we say overload principle needs to be applied. So if you had a previous weight and it's now become easier, you need to increase the intensity of that weight. We normally have increments between 2.5 kgs to 5 kgs. It depends on the training age of the person as well as their level of difficulty. Another one that I really would like to talk about is the FIT principle. So that is frequency, intensity, time, and type. So frequency is how often are you training. We normally see that resistance training is an add value. So you will have a main biomotor ability, which will be aerobic or it will be anaerobic workouts. But then the add value would be your resistance training that you combine with that. So then you need to ask yourself the question, how many times should I be in the gym in terms of frequency? So it might be if you're starting out with your gym program, you want to spend more time on getting stronger. So maybe starting off with 2 to 3 sessions a week. And then later on, as you're getting more race specific or matches, so if you're playing rugby, football, or you're doing marathons or 10K runs, there's a highly population of your races or your sport, which means you need more time to rest and recover. So I would suggest that you do 1 session in the gym in that specific block so that you just maintain the strength values that you've built up. Then intensity, as we spoke about earlier, you need to track your intensity. What was your weight before last week and what is it this week? As soon as you
mean
feel
the weight that you are lifting, not
the weight
necessarily the weight
lifting
on the scale.
Yes, no. We're not talking about, we never talk about the weight on the scale. So the weight you are lifting, and you need to progress that and push yourself to the limit. Then we talk about time. A lot of people are spending 2 hours in the gym. I ask myself, what are you doing in the gym?
Playing on their phones.
Yes, exactly. So you need to, I'm talking about 1 hour to at least 90 minutes. That's inclusive of your warm-up, your session, and your cool down. A lot of elite athletes, they spend at least 90 minutes in the gym, but they're doing prehabilitation before they actually do their resistance training program. So really have focus time. Don't put all the exercises in one training program, because there's still time to add on different ones. Then we talk about your type. So the type of exercises that you do, just try and keep it basic in the first instance, and then you advance and become a little bit more complex as you go along. Then the last one would be your recovery. We need to see that if you had maybe in the first part, if you're going in general prep, you have more resistance training sessions. Then you have Monday gym, you rest on the Tuesday. Then you do your Wednesday gym, you rest on the Thursday. You just need to see that there's a perfect balance in terms of hard work as well as the recovery between the different sessions.
I love that. And tell me, Shaundré, is there a specific way in which people should choose which muscle group to train? Like, for instance, they do upper body on, like you say, on a Monday and lower body on a Wednesday, or can you do all the muscles in one go and still get the same benefit?
So that's a very good question, because we have these questions coming up all the time. When you're working with a novice athlete, because whatever you're going to do, it's going to stimulate a response. You want to see that you do a full body workout so that the load is dispersed on all the different muscle areas. When you move to more advanced athletes, you can go to only upper body, and then the next day you focus on only lower body, because you are taxing a certain area for an hour, where if you have a full body workout, you're taxing different areas in 1 hour. So we have to have a novice going full body first, and then as you excel, you can go into your more upper body or lower body. Then you can also have different types. You put your core exercises in the beginning of the program and your assistant exercises later. So what is core? Core is your multi-joints, where you're looking at a whole host of muscles that you're activating. Your assistant exercises when you're focusing on one specific muscle. So that you'll put later on into the program that you wrote out for the day. Then you can do an upper body, lower body split. So within one session, you have one upper body exercise, one lower body exercise, one upper body and one lower body. Then you can also have a push and pull that you can utilize. One exercise might be push for bench press, and then you can have a bench pull, which is more pulling action. So you can alternate that as well. So there's different methods in how you can structure your training program to make it more creative and not be so boring as a normal classic program would be.
Would you please clarify to the listeners the difference between doing a lighter weight with more repetitions versus doing a heavier weight with fewer repetitions? Would they reap the same benefits, or is it two completely different entities?
Yeah, it's two different entities. So what you're basically speaking about, the one is focusing on muscular strength, and the one is focusing on muscular endurance. So what I like what you said earlier is having a focused approach when going to the gym. You can't do that at the same time. You might have lighter days where you're focusing more on muscular endurance, but again, you can't increase the volume and the intensity at the same time. So you need to be able to understand which one you will manipulate, effectively. But I think just having a strategy in terms of, for this training block, so 4 to 6 weeks, I'm going to focus on high repetitions, low weight. I think starting out, that will probably be a better approach. Get the foundation, and then you can move on to strength, which is lower repetitions, but a higher intensity. And that will come along if you have the stability and also the know-how, because if you go with a heavier weight, you must be able to have the proper technique. If you don't, you're going to injure yourself. And I've seen far too many times in the gym, people, male or female, carrying heavy weights, but their technique is not correct. And then they complain about lower back pain, etc., or, knee pain, but they're not executing the exercises well enough.
Thank you for sharing that. It's so important to remember that you are competing against your best self. It's not a competition against the next person in the gym. You don't know their journey. You don't know how long they've been going at it. And you just need to improve on how you were yesterday or the day before. And that is so important what you mentioned, because you stand the risk of injuring yourself, and then you're out for the next month to 6 weeks or 3 months. Would you mind sharing your opinion on this new thing that people talk about, the exercise snacks, where you maybe get up every hour and do 10 squats or walk up and down in the office, just as a benefit for the cardiovascular system, probably, or also just to have that muscle movement. Do you think there's any merit in that?
I think it's good for movement, just movement ability, because as I said earlier, sitting is one of the biggest problems that we have now.
They call sitting the new smoking.
Yeah, it's actually surpassed the concern with alcohol as well as eating unhealthy foods. Sitting is now number one bad habit. So we need to be able to look at our offices and how we are, maybe having ergonomic desks so you are able to stand a little bit more. But I think standing up, doing a few squats, walking around will be quite effective in terms of just the flexibility of the muscles and movement ability, functioning, because by the end of the day, you feel that you don't feel well within your own skin because you are just stiff all the time. So definitely can help. It's more for movement efficiency. It could help with cardiovascular fitness, but you need a specific stimulus when you're talking about cardiovascular in terms of resistance training.
And I think that another habit that people can implement that's quite helpful is to, after you've eaten a meal, being it your lunch, your snack, or even a dinner, just go for a 15 to 30-minute walk. When you're on a phone call in the office, walk up and down, or park your car a little further from the mall door. Just as we've explained how important that post-meal glucose uptake is, and you want to have that as effectively as possible. So move your muscles, use that muscle contraction also for that post-meal glucose spike that you might have.
Yeah. And a new trend that they have now currently is walking meetings. All my meetings with my students are mostly walking meetings.
I love that.
And if we need to record something that has to be done, we use a voice recording, or we write down on a little paper. But I think definitely keeping active could help with our daily lives at work especially.
Thank you very much. So there you have it, guys. Now you know what the importance of regular strength and muscle training is. Don't be scared of becoming too bulky. Don't be scared to walk into the gym and confidently start working on your muscles. Thank you, Dr. Shaundré, for sharing your wonderful insights with us. Don't forget to subscribe to Smulcast to make sure that you never miss an episode. And if you are interested to learn more about health and fitness, please go to our website. Until the next episode, stay strong and keep going.